Hey everybody, this is Jamie Loves Martial Arts, and I'm here with Matt Gelfand for the 13th episode of the Martial Praxis podcast. I wanted to bring Matt on because for a long time, but more intensely recently, Matt has been teaching me Chinese wrestling or Shuai Jiao, and I've learned a lot from him, and I think he's a really good coach and has a lot to offer, and I wanted to get him on here and kind of quiz him about training methodology, some of the differences between the styles of Shuai Jiao, and share that information with everybody. So really happy to have you here. Thanks for doing this, Matt.
No, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, it's cool because we have a lot of experience working together, and I feel like we'll be able to kind of cut through the crap and really give people a lot of good information.
You got it.
Um, maybe maybe we could start with talking if you could talk about the differences between I think there's more than two major styles of Shuai Jiao, but as far as what we have access to in the West, there's basically Beijing and Baoding, and maybe you could talk a little bit about those two styles and kind of like their differences and what they have to offer, and maybe a little bit about how you can use them together, because you did that when you were teaching me, and I feel like that was really effective.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. For anyone who knows what Shuai Jiao is, most people in America practice something called Baoding Shuai Jiao, right? If you don't know it, then Baoding Shuai Jiao is like the old style. Now, why Baoding? Because Baoding was one of the towns that our great grandmaster Cheng Dongsheng he came from, and so he did this fast wrestling, Kwai Jiao, right? That was at least that's the idea. That's what you hear a lot of if you're listening to a lot of American practitioners talk about Swai Jiao. They're talking about Kwai Jiao, which really means like fast throwing, fast techniques. Um, so Baoding Swai Jiao is obviously from the town Baoding, but there's five different towns, so to speak, that have Swai Jiao associated with them. It's the Hebei province, so it's like Shanghai, Beijing, Tianjin, um, Baoding, and there's one more I always forget, so I'll pick that up later. But there are five. It's all within the Hebei province, which is like northern-ish China. Not really anything from the southern side. And then that's like the old style. So that's mostly practiced in Taiwan, because all the people from the 1940s and 1950s who were fleeing communist China went to Taiwan, and so Chiang Dong-sheng was one of them. There was word that he was also the bodyguard for Chiang Kai-shek, basically the president or the main general.
Funny because I've heard so many different martial arts. Like there's like at least five different martial arts where I've heard that their Chang Dong Sheng, their grandmaster, was the bodyguard for Chiang Kai Shek. Like I'm like,
Sure.
this is just, I feel like this is just one of those things that people like to
Probably
like,
is.
they like to like lay claim to. Like unless the guy had like 10 different martial arts, like he had a Bagua guy, a Baji guy, a Shuai Jiao guy. I'm like, how many bodyguards could he have had? Like everyone says they were this guy's bodyguard.
Fair enough, fair enough, you know.
How come nobody wants to be Mao's bodyguard?
I think those that talked, right?
Mao just had guys with guns.
I think so. I think that, yeah. Well, that's kind of the thing, you know. I mean, you figure like, a lot of the most of the people that fled to Taiwan were martial artists, right?
Yeah.
But the lore is it's like they all went to Taiwan, but what happened to all the ones that are still in China? There still were plenty. They just didn't really, they had to change the way that they operated, you know?
Yeah, they had to be like kind of covert, and I think in doing that, right, like the lineages got like a little bit suppressed. They couldn't be open.
Yeah, and like so we talk about the Beijing style. So I know that Sifu Zhang would tell us that you see it in movies. There's a show called Shuai Jiao King in China, right? So it's like, and you see these guys, they're doing like kind of like demos in the middle of the street. It was like a carnival, like carnival act, like circus
Yeah.
acts. So that's what
Yes.
they were doing. So they would that's how they hit it. More than anything, they would just do some wild motions and throw each other around.
You turn it into a show.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's where like I'd say like the combat side kind of scaled down and became more just straight wrestling. wrestling with jackets versus like the Taiwan side that they were gearing up to come back and fight China, so they wanted
Yeah.
to make that push, so you still have, I mean, how's this? When it comes down to like the Beijing and Baoding styles, there's not really much different in the respect of the techniques themselves. It's the drills that are really the big difference, right?
Yeah.
So like the Baoding style, it's very, we'd say they're more like static drills. They're short movements, they're stopping. There's not any real dynamic motion. It's all like one, you can kind of count it all together, like 1, 2, 3. Where like the Beijing style is like it's these fluid motions. You've done it with me. It's like, we've been doing this for a while now, so it's not like no, you don't know. But for your audience, it's like imagine these really fluid throwing motions, but done solo,
Yeah.
which is really unique to the art. So Shuai Jiao is really like unique in the respect that we have a lot of drills, and those drills and the Baoding stuff are like the fundamental drills. These things are gonna develop your core and it teaches your body the basic mechanics, basic footwork, basic body work, and then the Beijing stuff is more fluid in motion. It's like
Yeah.
true to form.
The Baoding drills in my experience are easier to learn,
Hmm.
and more manageable, and I think that maybe a little bit easier for beginners or kids and stuff like that.
Sure.
The Beijing drills are more true to form. um I have my own, like, I, in all, being realistic, like, the system works, like, for me at least, I feel like you do the drills and then you learn the throws, and, like, I'm able to take it from the drill to the throw to sparring relatively easily.
Sure.
I have my own, like, reservations or questions about, like, what are the drills really doing? Like, my sneaking suspicion is that, like, even with the Beijing drills, which are really they're like true to form. It's like almost exactly how you throw the person. That really,
Mhm.
like, they're building the body's capacity to do the throws. Like, you're not
Yeah.
gonna necessarily learn the throw from the drill. There's nobody there to knock down, but, like, you're gonna develop a body that is capable of doing that particular throw, which I
Sure.
do think is important, because if you don't have the ability to physically do those movements, then how are you gonna do the throw?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, think about like in judo, in Tsuchikomi, where you're constantly just practicing, it's you're doing the drill on somebody, right? But you don't actually do maybe like by the 10th you throw them, but in Swaija you don't have that. Like we do have drills that are like that, but not in the same vein. So it's the to your point, those forms really do give your body structure in motion. And once you actually can grab that body, it makes it a lot easier to understand. Of course, you still have to work on all those pulling motions and like the big stick, the big stick motions where you're going to grab and pull and all that shifting, like all that stuff really helps, and you have to combine it all. But the drills themselves are very useful. I agree with you.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because in Shuai Jiao we have all these tools, right? Like the big stick, small stick, belt cracking, the stone locks, or like bricks, right? There's so many of them. There's like that half barbell thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I
I'm,
say I could pull each one if you want. I have them like
yeah, I'm like missing a whole bunch of them, because
no,
there's
no,
so,
no, actually, what you said is about right. I mean, there's a small bag and a long bag. After that,
yes.
that's pretty much about it. Yeah, you're right. The stone locks, the big stick, the small stick. Yeah, I mean all that stuff. I really wanted to get my hands on one of the barbells with with the stick, but I guess you can make it. They probably make it easier.
Yeah. But it's interesting too, because, like, you don't have there's no way you're gonna do all of that stuff in one session. You'd be training for 5 hours and you'd be dead.
Yeah, just
um
bell cracking alone, you could do an hour straight of bell cracking.
I mean, we would train with Zhang and do an hour and a half of just
The straight drills. Yeah,
solo drills. We didn't even get into any of the tools yet, right?
I
So
know.
it's interesting, and I guess one thing I want to ask you about too is what's the methodology and the logic behind structuring a training session? How would you, let's say somebody has, I'm if you're working solo, right? Like, let's say
Mhm.
there's nobody else involved. Could you give us like a little bit of an outline about how you might structure a solo training session for Shuai Jiao, which I think is also another one of the benefits of the way the system is that you can actually practice alone, and it's not as good as wrestling people, but you'll get
Sure.
something from it.
No, for sure. So I guess it all depends on whether or not you know everything, right? So if you've got all the drills in your arsenal and you're able to actually do everything together, I probably structure in the respect of doing, and I do it myself, but like you'll do one day of Baoding stuff, one day of Beijing stuff. Because the Baoding stuff, I mean, the Baoding you can pretty much cover with bell cracking in one session.
Mm.
Right, so there's like I think it's about 25 to 27 techniques for belt cracking, and probably about 15 to 20 for the forms, the basic drills. So you can combine that into a 45-minute to an hour workout easy. I mean, what I used to do a long time ago, I do my 2 mile run, and then I go through all of the basics from Baoding to Beijing, just form drills. It's a bit excessive. I'm not gonna say it's not. I was just, I didn't have a partner at the time or whatever, whenever it was, so
Yeah.
that's what I would do. But if you're gonna do it solo and you're looking to really get the most of it, I would definitely break it down into drills one day, like hand drills one day, and then tools another day, right? And alternate those. So you do like because the belt cracking you can't do every day. You hurt your joints. Even if you're
Yeah.
doing 100% proper, every time you snap, you're pulling on the joints, and I don't recommend it. But
Well,
the
maybe, and this is just a speculation because I don't know, but maybe there's a chance that one of the reasons for all the variation in the tools was to accommodate for that, right? Like they're like,
sure.
oh, like if you do any one of these things for 3 hours every day, your body's gonna hurt. But you could rotate through some different ones of these
Sure.
and kind of take the strain and the stress off of certain joints and certain tissues.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I would say probably yes. I mean, I could say that John would, and like we'll go to class sometimes, and so at the very end of class, all of a sudden we'll be doing bricks and big stick, right, and small stick. But I'd say the belt cracking, especially, it would always be a separate thing. I
Yeah,
mean, it's I think I kind of feel like you're either doing belt cracking or you're doing the form drills,
yeah.
the Jim Gong stuff. If you're not, if I don't think you're doing both together on the same day. If
And
you're
you
if you're gonna
probably
practice,
have to get through those form drills first before you get into the belt cracking because the belt cracking is built off of it. Like you have to know those form drills before you're gonna learn the
right?
belt cracking.
Yeah, because I mean, like the Baoding stuff. I mean, it's very rudimentary, right? It's sitting in a horse stance, it's shifting into a bow and arrow stance, it's walking with it, it's doing like lifting your leg up and bringing it back down. Those kinds of things, really basic stuff. When it comes to the Beijing stuff, you're effectively doing the same drill only with a belt.
Yeah.
So if you don't know the form, then you might as well just not do it because it'll be a waste of your time.
The Beijing drills are pretty challenging to learn. Like, in general, I feel pretty comfortable picking up movement, but some of those drills like just completely like
You picked it up great, and I'm not saying it because I'm on your podcast. I'm serious. You're right. It took me at the very beginning. I mean, I was very fortunate. I had Mario, my friend Mario, Mario Polito. He had already been there for like 2 or 3 years by the time I jumped in. So I'm trying to learn, and I'm like a fish out of water at that point.
yeah,
I don't know any better, and so it took me like a year to really get the forms, the drills, to the point that I thought that at least I could do them right. And of
yeah,
course, now after doing it for so long, it's like I now learned how to do them better, and I
yes.
learned all the nuances. But just to get the basics, to be able to look like I kind of know what I'm doing, it took me almost a year to figure out. And there's a lot of drills. I mean, it's like the same thing. It's like 20, 25 drills of just you
It's
know,
not just the quantity though. There are some really challenging
yeah, yeah, yeah,
movements to coordinate, like the sambuti, with the butterfly hands,
yeah,
the crunching, che.
yeah.
Some of them are just they're tough to learn.
There are. Your hands are moving one thing, your legs are doing another. You're moving in different directions at different times. Absolutely, I agree with you.
What would you tell people that want to learn these drills? How did you approach it so that it was manageable? Did you break it down like you're going to learn the hand movement and then you're going to learn the foot movement and then put them together, or
So,
what was
so
the approach?
I can say that at the beginning, I mean, I kind of look at it like in the way I learned martial arts initially. It's just here, good luck.
Yeah,
It's like nobody sat there and say, all right, what are my legs doing, what are my hands doing? But yeah, I would focus on the leg work before I'd focus on anything else, because once you can get the leg work, not all of the leg work is the same, but like the in the Baoding stuff, it's really very simple. It's bow and arrow stances, it's shifting, it's horse stance, it's really like maybe 4 or 5 steps at most. And if you can master those steps, that'll make it a little easier. And this is where we talk about a progression, right? Like I wouldn't, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't even think about jumping into the Beijing stuff until I learned the Baoding stuff right, because the Baoding stuff will give you enough of the basic footwork
yeah.
alone that you can start figuring it out. So I would say start with the footwork, then work to your hands, and then when you're ready to go into the Beijing stuff, because the drills are a little bit different in the way that you stand and move, I would definitely work on the leg work before I'd work on the handwork.
There were also some things that you had me doing. Like I don't know if this has a name or anything in Chinese, but when I have quite a few kids that I do private lessons with, and usually I try to get them a partner, but occasionally, there's a scheduling kerfuffle and they end up with no partner, and I'm a bit too large to for them to even practice moves on. So
I was just thinking of what do you call it? The karate guy from oh my God. Oh, what's the name of that? What's the name of that movie? The karate guy was beating the, well, it's either that or Kramer beating the crap out of,
yes,
well, it's like, it's like, I was thinking like American flag jumpsuit, American flag pants. I forget the movie now. It's driving me nuts. But anyway, sorry.
yes,
That's,
yeah, exactly. That you're just beating the crap out of these little kids.
I've seen you do it. I don't know what you're talking about. No. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No.
At least I don't post it on Instagram in slow mo.
That's fair. That's fair.
Look, I foot swept this 60-year-old woman. I'm so good. Uh, but you had me do this, and when I would have lessons and they wouldn't have a partner, one of the things I was doing, I was saying, okay, you know what, let's do some Shuai Jiao solo drills, because the jujitsu solo drills that we have, they're so easy and boring, and the kids have those down. And I was like, you know what, this is a good thing to have them practice and do, and plus it helps me learn to have to show them and teach them and break it down, and I would get to practice a little bit, so it was a little selfish. But one of the things I realized was that before they can do almost any of those Beijing drills, that I would have to have them learn the Fee Fi Fo Fum walk.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
You can't do the drills without learning this pattern of sort of picking up the rear foot, picking up the front foot, and learning to walk like that.
Yep.
So I think, not that there's any videos anywhere that I know of that show people the Fee Fi Fo Fum walk, but if you want to learn these drills, I think you gotta start with that Fee Fi Fo Fum walk.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with you. That's part of the reason why when we went through it a long time ago, it's like that because that's in my head. It's you just gotta learn to,
No, when
back
you
and
watch
forth.
Sifu Zhang do the
He does
Beijing
it,
drills, or
yeah.
anybody do the Beijing drills, that's what they're doing. They pick up one foot and then they step, and then they pick up the other foot and they step. It's always like that.
Well, if
And
you
it's
see, I mean, like when you go to his class, he does kind of talk about it. Like he's like he talks about like 4 points.
yeah.
Right, it's back forward, back forward, back forward. It's so you're constantly like this back and forth, and so yeah, he just doesn't. He just said like he'll say it and just say if you don't know it, sorry. But this is what this is what you're trying to learn though.
Yeah,
And
but I think isolating it as a drill is
perfect,
really
yeah,
helpful, because it's actually the foundation for the movement that's underneath the rest of the drills. So that was something that really helped me um, pick up these drills. And I also noticed that really made a big difference with the kids that I was teaching. Like they would go from not being able to have the right, rhythm and stepping with it to being able to do some of the more basic ones.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, because it puts you in the right position. I mean, even when you're taking that first step and you're transitioning back and you're shifting your weight, when you're grabbing somebody, it feels much more natural.
Yeah,
When you're doing solo, it's kind of weird. Like it takes you having to kind of learn how to keep your body a little forward, keep your weight a little forward. So when you're shifting back, you're not falling backwards. You're just kind of like you're cascading back forward, back forward, back forward. And when you grab somebody, you can really take them around.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So when it comes to training uh, with a partner and trying to get good, like maybe you could explain a little bit about, we did the camp for the first nationals, pretty much just you and me, and we would get some jujitsu people to hop in to spar with here and
Sure.
there, like on Tuesdays and stuff. But
Mhm.
maybe you could just give like a little bit of an outline overview of what your thinking was with the training that you had me do, and what, kind of like what the plan was, because the later camps, I feel like we spent a lot of time like going and training with Zhang, so
Sure.
it was a little bit different, but I thought
Mhm.
that one was really effective. I mean, I won nationals with like,
You
with a
did you
little
did
bit
good.
with
You
not
did
a
good,
whole lot
kid.
of training. I mean, we trained for maybe 2 or 3 months,
Yeah,
and I was able to do quite well, win all my matches.
sure. Yeah, I mean, look, your cardio has always been good, so that makes it you make my life easier, right? Let's call
Yeah,
it
yeah,
it is.
yeah,
So it just, I mean, if someone wants to fight and they have poor cardio, it makes it really tough to teach them anything, right? To go through
yeah.
it. But I mean, working with you, I'd say footwork was my first concern, and then secondly was the hands. Something that Harry, my friend Harry, our friend Harry, um, he's he really focused on the shifting and the movement, right, to try to block. And so I really wanted you to have some kind of blocking system.
Yeah.
And so, there was first that, and then learning how to really grab and move. It's not like you didn't know how to grab and move. Obviously, it's, you've been doing martial
No, I
arts
mean,
a long time.
honestly, I would say that I didn't, compared to how I feel now.
Mm,
I think what I knew was how to fight, sort of,
mm,
that like I had an understanding of how to get into the pocket and get a hold of somebody and potentially throw them down and maybe not get thrown myself. But as far as
right.
the methodology of gripping and the methodology even of stance and footwork, there was a lot missing. I mean, the like, talking about the first point you made with the footwork and the stance,
Hmm.
um man, like that has made such a big difference in nogi, stand up, Shuai Jiao, and I've been doing judo a little bit lately, and all that stuff. Just it sounds so like crazy, but just being disciplined about keeping my dominant right leg in the front
Yeah.
makes such a big difference. I got into it with one of my students the other day, because I was like, I always just ask people, because I don't want to come at them before I know. So I'll always just be like, "Are you a lefty?" And they're like 90% of the time they're like, "No." And I'm like, "Okay, so you should put your right foot forward." And I'm like, "We're wrestling, there's no striking going on." And this one guy, he's like, "Well, I don't really feel comfortable standing like that." And I'm like, "Well, you're gonna suck forever if you don't
Right.
switch your stance."
Like, you came to our class, right? You came to my class, right?
But it's also just like, I'm not lying to you, like, I want
Yeah,
you to
but
get better.
well, you know what it is? People feel like it's a natural. Like, if you've gotten so comfortable with a left hand, left hand dominant, left leg dominant stance is one thing, and like in jujitsu, you see it. It's like everyone's their body might be a little off, or they get used to just shifting back and forth. They don't think that there's any necessity to be dominant on one side. And look, I in kung fu, it's like, oh, you got to learn how to be left side, right side, and that's cute,
Ambidextrous.
right? And that's cute. Except that in fighting, it confuses the hell out of you. So it's like you're like, oh
It's
wait,
not
I'm
just
here. Oh wait, I'm
that
here.
too. I think that on top of, first of all, it's confusing. Second of all, there's a skill issue there, right? So if I spend 100% of my time training with my right leg forward and I develop skill with my right leg forward, and somebody else spends 50% of their time with their right leg forward and 50% of their time with their left leg forward, you can't necessarily you can't be in both stances at once. So at any point now, I have 1,000 repetitions of doing something on my right side, and you have 500 repetitions of doing that on your right side. I'm going to be more skilled than you when we're in that scenario, you know.
Right.
And then there's also the problem of the dominant hand, right? So if you're right-handed and you're standing with your left leg lead and we're grappling, you're going to start trying to manipulate your opponent with your more dexterous right hand, and you're going to cross yourself up. You're now reaching across your center line because your left leg is in the front. It
Yep.
it just makes for an awkward exchange. And that's
Yep.
not to say that there's not specific movements and specific times that you might strategically switch your stance or bring your
Sure.
right leg in the back as part of a technique. These things are all there, but most of the time you want to be disciplined about keeping your right leg forward, and that was huge in for me, and it's something that's applied across the board. Even when I'm doing no-gi and I'm dealing with wrestlers who are shooting on my legs, it is
Mhm.
so much easier to defend when my right leg is in the lead and I have a staggered stance that only allows them to reach one of my legs.
Right. Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, I agree with you, and that's something I focus on I focus just in my own training a lot, and Siva Jong really helped me with that more than almost anybody else, I would say, because I did fall victim to switching sides when I used to spar and when I used to fight in Shuai Jiao, and when I was only practicing the Baoding stuff because our teachers didn't really focus on stay this way and just, keep that hand back. Because I mean, it's when people look at it, they might think you are crossing your body because you're out, your one hand's back this way, one hand, but you're not. Your right foot's in front, your hand's just kind of protecting, staying. It's almost like you're kind of doing this, but not. But it's enough where you can use that left hand to really grab and move, where the right hand's going to be that power hand, that the follow through hand. So I think that it's really necessary to focus on staying one side or the other. I mean, then there's also the fact that even if you are a lefty, as an example, and you want to stick with your left leg forward, you're fighting mostly righties.
Yes,
And so,
exactly.
so it makes it a little difficult because, I mean, I always found it was really easy to fight a lefty or easier to fight a lefty because there's just so many more techniques. I'm dominant
Well,
and
it's
I'm
also
comfortable.
their lead leg, right? Their left lead leg is now closer to your right lead leg. So
Right.
your entry for all your attacks is easier. Like if you want to do duh, you barely have to set it up. Their leg is right there. If you want to do
Right.
quo, the outside
Mhm.
foot sweep,
Mhm.
their leg is right there. The duh is like a uchigari, inside trip for the viewers who might not be familiar with the Chinese wrestling terminology.
Yeah, I mean and that's the thing. I mean, like I in talking about dominance and dominance, in talking about being on a talking about
Dominance, submissiveness.
right, exactly. But in talking about dominant sides, the like
So many jokes.
I know. It's like stay present, stay here,
And we're banned from YouTube.
right? Does he have like three different disclaimers underneath? Like, oh man, all right. But yeah, no. So like when you're staying in one position, you get comfortable doing certain throws from certain positions, right? And so if you're staying on your right side, you might find yourself doing a technique you really never even thought you would do because you have practiced both sides, but as you're throwing, all of a sudden you change up and you move. It's a different story. But
Yes.
your focus should always be on that right side, regardless. And look, if you find yourself on the left side, don't panic. Obviously, it's not like it's the end of the world, but you want to keep it moving and reset as quickly as you can if
Yeah.
you can manipulate your opponent. You know,
Yeah, you want to recognize you've been pulled out of position because again, let's say you're fighting a righty, which is the case most of the time, unless you're in Inner Mongolia, because apparently there's like
everyone's a lefty,
yeah,
right?
like apparently 70% of people over there are lefties, which I find crazy. I don't know
That's
what's going
crazy.
on.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
Mm,
But most of the time you're fighting a righty, right? And if they pull your left leg into the front, now you're
Right.
in that scenario where you're vulnerable to attacks from their dominant right leg. They're gonna hit you with the half Tayatoshi, the Y. They're gonna hit you with inside trips. They're gonna all of those attacks you're now vulnerable to with their dominant leg attacking your non-dominant side. So you have to recognize that as being now you've been pulled out of position. And this is all stuff that we worked on during that camp that was super impactful, made a really big difference.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it's right side dominance. I know we focused a lot on that, and and to that point, once you get that as a base, it makes it a lot easier to do the rest of it, right?
Yeah.
Because if you have to keep thinking about it when you're fighting, then that's how you're gonna get taken. Because
Yep.
look, fighting is supposed to be more muscle memory, not thought, right?
Yes.
The whole idea is the more you let your mind go and flow, the easier your body is just going to end up doing stuff. It's when you're thinking about, oh wait, I need to do this. Oh, I need to be in this position. I need to move. I need to keep them out. That's when either you get taken or you just don't do anything, and then it becomes a
Yep.
dull fight. So it's you want to be really comfortable. So first is getting that grip. First is getting your stance correct and making sure you're comfortable in that position and your movement. Always willing to reset, and then secondly, getting that first grip, which doesn't always have to be a sleeve grip, but at least having that as a getting a dominant grip and maneuvering your opponent as quickly as you can, not just grabbing and holding like you see a lot of beginners do.
Yeah. And then the next thing I want to ask about is maybe you could talk about the gripping strategy and just sort of like outline the basics of what we worked on, because honestly I think in that first camp we did, my footwork came together, because I remember you really hounding me about the footwork, and I think one of your I honestly think you're one of the better coaches that I've ever worked with, like just in
Thank
terms
you.
of like your it's so hard to describe it the right way, but you have that um focus and discipline as a coach to always find the important point of what's going on to be improved upon. And it's not in like a pejorative way. I never felt that. Not that, like, I am sensitive to that in a sense that I'll get annoyed, but I'm not gonna let that like stick. I'm gonna say, okay, you know what, they're my coach, they're trying to help me,
Sure.
even if they're being annoying. But what I mean is, when I would send you, because I sent you a lot of footage of me sparring. I was probably
Sure.
doing Shuai Jiao every day
Yeah.
in preparation, and I would send you tape, and I would be throwing people all over the place and doing all different techniques, and mostly winning, right? But you would just look at it and be like, hey, like, your left leg is in the front over here. You gotta keep your left leg in the back. And it wasn't even I was like, damn, he's right. Like, it wasn't even like, I think sometimes, especially with me, like, people get distracted by the theatrics. They're like,
Sure.
oh man, like, you just overheaded that guy 6 times. Like, but it's like, no, 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 like, keep your left leg back. And I think that attention to detail and that ability to filter out what's not important, and it sounds kind of negative, but to also be able to filter out what somebody's doing right for the
Sure.
sake of finding the things that need fixing is so
Right.
important, that for a coach. And I think that's one of your like talents, honestly, is being able to do that and also keep it light and enjoyable at the same time.
I mean, I definitely whipped you with my belt in your leg a few times. I'm sure of that.
Abuse.
Definitely,
Abuse.
there's some abuse, just um, but I mean, look, it's like anything else. Keep that leg back. Keep that leg back. But yeah, no, I mean, like, I appreciate that. Thanks, man. You know, when it comes down to it, I always think about when I'm trying to teach or coach, I'm trying to see it from the other angle, right? So I'm trying to see it like, all right, well, let's first obviously get you just to do something, right? Let's get you
Yeah.
comfortable doing something. But once we've gotten to that something stage where you're actually doing something, now we have to start tweaking you, because if you keep working the same way, you're going to develop bad habits, right? And it took me years to break out of old bad habits, because it just
Yeah.
wasn't. I'm not saying it wasn't taught right. It just there were things that weren't focused on with me, and I
Well,
had to
that's what I
relearn
mean
that.
about the coaching too. Is like, you like when the coach is really attentive, right? And they're they're pruning the bonsai tree, so to speak,
Sure, yeah.
then you don't develop those bad habits. Every time I
Right,
tried to develop a bad habit, you would come in and be like, don't do that. So
right.
that's why I think that was so helpful and beneficial. And what I was saying before was that in that first camp, the stance came together, and then I went to nationals and came back, and they were like, "Do you want to go to China?" And I was like, "All right, I'll go to China." And between that sort of like period of training up until February when we had the competition in New York was when I feel like I started to grasp the gripping. And just to give a sense of how important this is, it went from me having matches that were back and forth and competitive to once I understood the gripping, nobody has scored a point on me since.
Right.
I
Yeah, because
no one's taken me down.
no, it's the truth, and you've done amazing with it. And I'm not saying that once again because I'm on your podcast and you're my boy. But no, but but
Man, you're doing a great job making yourself sound unbiased.
completely unbiased. No, but it's the truth. It's like you kind of we say it's kind of like putting the fear of God into somebody, right?
Yeah.
When you get the gripping right, you feel like you make them feel useless, and
Yes.
that's your goal. Once you make them feel useless, you can feel it. You
I don't
know
even
when
think they just feel useless. They are useless.
right, yeah, you start manipulating
If
them.
you
That's
can't
right.
grab the other person, how do you
Right.
throw them?
Right, and second, and like we do, you put in the pressure, right? And that's the idea. It's like you grab and you don't just hold. You start moving them around. You start shifting, and so you're making them fight back. And the more they have to fight back, the more they're not thinking about doing something else to you.
And then they give bigger and bigger reactions, which
Right.
set them up to being thrown.
Right, you frustrate the hell out of them, and that's the whole goal. You want to frustrate your opponent because let's say feeling useless, but the more frustrated they get, the more they do more desperate things.
Yes.
To your point, they start doing bigger and bigger, allow you to do bigger and bigger movements. And that's the goal. Keep putting that pressure over and again. And if you're not engaged, you break off and you start again, and that's fine. But you start manipulating that opponent and they start moving. Once you kind of start feeling the momentum, that's your moment. And you've been really good at capitalizing on that because you started to feel it, and the grips matter and your stance. So if your stance is good and your gripping is good, then the rest of it is just where's he open?
I would almost say that I think the gripping is more important than the stance,
Sure.
but the stance is a little bit easier to learn.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, you say, as you said it 1,000 times, right? Your hands open the door, your legs walk through it, right?
That was
So
a big one. Yeah, that helps me so much, and it's helped me with so many throws, so many techniques. It's a really good cue.
yeah, because if you can't, I mean, it's as stupid as if you can't open a door, are you going to walk through the door? No, you can't. You have to pull that door open. You have to then start through. So yeah, your legs will be easier.
I walk into the glass door all the
I
time.
mean, to me too, but that's, we weren't going to talk about that. But yeah, so that's where like, first is blocking, right? And I go back to Harry's blocking system, right? You got to get comfortable with just keeping the hands away, right?
Parrying.
Right, parrying, flowing in, just moving, getting the hands out and keeping them from feeling like a threat. And then you go into what I'd say Zhang's system. It's not even so much parry as more of it's like a cascading guide into the position.
Yeah,
Sometimes just grabbing.
it's almost like he does like these like semicircular movements where he deflects your hand and then
Yep.
like kind of rides up your arm into the grip.
Always, yeah, exactly. It's similar to in a respect to like Wing Chun Chi Sao, right? So
Yeah.
you're like this, or it's always like in and through. Sometimes he just grabs you, and if you're that open, then that's fine. But a lot of
Yeah.
times it's like it's here and then grab, it's here and then grab. It's over here, grab here, and then change it up. Say it's like playing smart hands, right? So
Yeah.
your hands are coming in. Maybe that didn't work, and maybe you grab here and then you grab over there and you grab through here, and the whole time you're not just grabbing a jacket, you're pulling your opponent. So I mean, Sifu Zhang he's really big on that. It's just like that grabbing and take him
Yank.
and move and yank the hell out of him. And then when you do that, you get that, oh my God feeling, if you're that person getting it done, which we've all been, so, so it's like,
Oh my God, I need to go to the chiropractor.
right. That's right. Just going with it. And being a good partner though is really important. Like not being defensive when you're practicing that is
Yeah.
I say like in judo being a good uke, right? Like being a good partner to the person you're playing with is
I mean, I
really
think that's
important.
one of the big limitations of drilling. I'm big into live training because when you don't have people who are good, like
Yeah.
when I'm working with you and Zhang, we're all able to give each other a look. So
Right.
drilling becomes an option. But if I'm working with people who are less experienced, they're new, they're a little spazzy, they're not so good. I can't get them to give me a realistic look unless I just tell them, okay, attack me and try to throw me. Then all of a
Right.
sudden they start having more normal reactions.
Right.
Um, but
That's the
yeah,
truth.
maybe do you think you could just quickly like overview the approach that Zhang takes to the gripping? Because I think this is really important and something that can kind of transfer to other grappling arts and sports.
Sure. I mean, obviously stance, we were talking about stance, right? Your backhand, your front hand's gonna become kind of almost your backhand in a way, right? So let's say you're in front here, you're dragging it back, and this hand's gonna be the main hand that's gonna be trying to grip.
Yeah, so
So,
you use your non-dominant hand to try to establish the first grip. And
right.
you're trying to keep your dominant side. The Shuai Jiao jacket, for people that don't know it, it's cut off at the sleeve. It's kind of like a t-shirt, but when you grip inside of the front on the t-shirt, this is one of the strongest grips. So we want to keep our right hand back, right, so that they're not able to get that grip on the right side and control your dominant arm.
Right. Yeah, so obviously your focus with your front hand is ideally going to get the inside sleeve, right?
Yeah,
You'd say that the one of the most dominant positions in Shuai Jiao is top collar, inside sleeve, right? If
yeah,
not top collar, then it'd be front lapel, but you can also do cross lapel, but the having that inside hand is really that important. Now, if you're talking about like BJJ or otherwise, it's really an overhand grip. You're coming in as like an overarm, instead of coming in this way, right?
yeah. It's funny too because I've been training judo and like I'm so bad at the grips. I've been getting my ass kicked in the gripping. Like they'll just out grip me like
Mhm.
so badly, and then once we get to a distance where I have two hands on them, I'm able to work out of the bad grip into a good grip, and I throw them. But
That's why in judo I love sleeves because with the
well,
sleeves, it's like
that's what they're telling me. That's what the coaches have been talking to me about is controlling the sleeve, and it's really it's the equivalent of everything we do in the Shuai Jiao gripping, but with the sleeve. Now you have a way to pin and control their hands, and you have to
right.
make use of that. I think I'm trying to approach the judo jacket the way I
I
approach the
guess why I
Shuai
did that.
Jiao,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, you can because
it's a
it's just so much.
disaster.
Yeah, it's so much cloth. It's like when you start pulling, it's like the Swajo jacket is so close to your body that when you pull, the whole body moves. But in judo, it's like you pull and they're still there. You're like, oh, all right.
It's the sleeves, man. They're just killing me by grabbing sleeves.
No, that's the truth. But that next time I see you, I mean, I'll show you. I'm sure you already seen it. But like, I like taking the sleeves and wrapping it around. So like, I'll do overhand, not a pistol grip because you're not really allowed to do pistol grips, right?
Yes.
Right, but I'll grab it and with enough of the material, not grabbing the end of it, more like right about here, give or take. I'll grab and I'll
Mm.
manipulate and use that to pull, or I'll grab over and then wrap under. It's the whole
Yeah, yeah,
idea of
yeah.
exposing that distance, right, to what you're comfortable with. I mean, with in judo, they're so used to working from the sleeves, right? The sleeves are everything. Everything's you very rarely like old school judo. They'll normally pick from right below the elbow.
Yes.
You see those motions, right?
Yep.
You don't see that as much anymore. I think probably because the jacket might be different. I don't know.
I also think that it depends on what phase of the gripping you're in. In the early phase of the gripping, it really pays to control low down on the sleeve or
Sure.
high up on the armpit if you have somebody who's stiff arming.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure, absolutely. I
but
agree with that.
when you control the end of the sleeve, you're at the end of the lever, right? And then you can kill their ability to grip you, which
Hmm.
allows you to be more offensive with less fear of being countered.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one good thing is I'd say like in Shuai Jiao you have like ways of breaking off the grip, and in judo you have similar ways, right? So
Yeah.
it's like you get comfortable with just shifting that weight and taking from the sleeve out there. You can It's much easier to pull the arm off of you, and if they're getting to a hard like a hard stiff arm to you,
Yeah, I
you
think
know.
that's also the higher level of grip fighting is learning to break the opponent's grips
Sure.
while maintaining your own grips.
Yeah, because
Everybody
everyone
can
breaks. Yeah, everyone
everyone can
breaks.
break a grip and get really far away from the person and not be able to do something, but the really good guys are staying in, breaking grips and countering.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and you're talking about, Jongs versus grip fighting. It's the same. You work on getting the grip and moving, and then you work on breaking it and then and maneuvering your opponent. Because to your point, if you keep just breaking away and you lose that ability to fight, so you want to still have a grip when you tear off something and then you pull them out and move them around. So the whole idea is to keep that body in motion rather than stopping and restarting a fight.
Yeah, it's interesting too because there's many positions in all of martial arts where they act as a two-way channel. Like we have the whizzer underhook in nogi, where
Yeah.
the underhook player has attacks, the whizzer player has attacks. There's things you can do to win that position, like controlling the far arm or head position. These are
Mhm.
ways to increase your odds of being successful, but one advantage to being good in, like, almost calling it being in the pocket, being good in these positions where you're sort of in the pocket the way they are in boxing, is that your opponent won't necessarily back out.
Right.
If I'm killing you in the grip fight so bad and you can't do anything, you may never engage. You might just put your hips really far back, and that's a whole nother challenge to deal with. But
Mhm.
if I allow you to get a grip that maybe you want and I can tell that you want, but is ultimately insignificant for what I'm trying to do to you, then I can lure you into the space where I can attack you much easier. And I think this is very important because otherwise you end up in the kind of bullfight, like stalling position. And it can be hard to break that. Even a lot of times I'm stronger than my opponents, but it's, they just put their arms straight. It's tough to deal with.
It's a pain in the butt, yeah, no, for sure. When it comes down to it, those are the things. I mean, obviously, double lapel grip and push. I mean, if someone knows how to really bear their weight properly, it's hard. It's hard to fight. I mean, that's part of the reason why you try not to let them get to that position, right?
Yeah.
So, as they're grabbing you for the second, you should already be engaging to the next movement. And so a lot of people say like, well, how do I break out of this? Well, don't get in there, right? That's the
Yes.
first, right? And of course, yeah, all
The
right, well,
quintessential martial arts teacher answer. Coach, how do
right.
I escape the rear naked choke? Don't get put in a rear naked choke.
Right, right, exactly. Right. But it does happen, right? So you have to, it's like I fought, I mean, I remember I was in China and I was fighting this one Mongolian dude. I mean, I mean, first of all, mind you, he's like 6 inches taller than me, right? They say he was 220. He was probably 250.
Yeah, they don't
Uh,
really weighing in over there, at least at those tournaments, isn't really the same as a weigh-in that I've been to. There were plenty of people, and it wasn't even really unfair because there were people who weren't Chinese, and they were way over, and the officials just go, okay, yeah. I'm thinking to myself, he's way over the weight that he's supposed to be. They're like, no, you just have to get on the scale. Once you get on the scale, you're weighed in.
I can, that's
We're not
awesome.
actually gonna check.
But I could tell you that at least in Wenzo, they did check for Mario, and Mario I think he was like 255, and we thought it was a 250 plus category, so it didn't matter, but it was actually until 250.
Oh no.
But there was a dude, and I have that video somewhere. That guy was like 350. There's no way he was anything less. Mongolian dude. I'm like, what happened here? It's like, help me out. Nothing made any sense in that tournament. Whatever, it is what it is. It does happen, right?
I
But
know somebody who they were weighing in, and it was like a video weigh-in, and they just held something on the side and was just lifting themselves up. So maybe he did a trick like that. You know, the UFC, they have the towel trick where
yeah,
they touch the top of the towel and push down.
I like that.
Save you a couple ounces.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I will say I remember when I was my first international tournament in Italy, um, I was like maybe 3.5 pounds over, right? And they're like, all right, you have an hour, come back, right? So I lost like 5 pounds in
Oof.
in an hour, which was pretty good. I'm pretty happy. I ran, it was hot out, it was perfect. I did the whole spitting, running,
Yep,
it
yep,
worked.
yep.
Um, and then I came in, I was under. And while I was fighting, I was beating this guy Yevgeny, who was a really cool dude and was Russian guy. And
He trains and lives in Taiwan.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
okay.
Yeah, so I was beating him, and I remember Antonio Langiano, the head of the ESAU, he was like, "Stop, stop, stop!" I'm like, "We're like, why? Why?" They're like, he's not the right weight." I'm like, "The Brits are the ones that weighed us in. I don't know. Like, it wasn't me. I'm sorry. It's like I really was that weight though. It really happened.
There's nothing more offensive than being told that you're not in the right weight category after you just killed yourself to make weight.
Right, that's right. I mean, like I
You're
had
like,
the
I'm not the
sweatsuit
right weight.
on.
I almost just died.
Right, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the most weight I've ever lost was in Kazakhstan when I was fighting in the Kyrgyz the Kazakh arrest, right? It was I lost 12 pounds
Oof.
in about 2 hours. I did the bathtub thing where you do
Yeah.
108 degree and it was back and forth. I was so weak, and I still wasn't at the weight I needed to be. And I was like, I don't care. I was like, let's just go fight. It's fine. I really don't care. Oh no, it's Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan. Yeah, that was really tough. But whatever, it is what it is. And it was so cold out, so it was like
When you were in Kyrgyzstan, you were doing the belt
the
wrestling,
bell
the
wrestling. Yeah, yeah. Kyrgyz
Alish.
Kurosh. No, no, Kyrgyz Kurosh.
Okay.
Alish is also from Kyrgyzstan, but they, I don't know. This is like the shorts and the shirtless thing, and you have the belt,
Okay.
and you start, you start grabbing. So I ended up fighting the absolute division and the heavyweight division. So I had that Mongolian man pick me up fast.
Oh God.
I remember he fell on me. My hip was kind of hurting before. I feel like he righted it, when he fell on me, So that was the thing. I have that somewhere on my Instagram. I gotta find it. I'll send that to you. But that was fun. But yeah, so like, weight loss is crazy. But nevertheless, I talk about weight and being in the right position, it's like, it's different in every tournament. Obviously, Shuai Jiao is a little less on the regulation than other tournaments, which part of the reason why, like anything else, you want to make sure that there's a real standard, and there is a standard, but not everyone holds to it. And when you're
Everything
abroad,
has its loopholes.
right?
Whatever you do, however you do it, there's always a way to game the system. That's having done so many different things. And that's not to say there's degrees of fairness. I've been in tournaments that were more unfair and less, there's better and
Mhm.
worse. I'll say that, but every system can be gamed somehow, whether it's day before weigh-ins, day of weigh-ins, video weigh-ins. There's always a way to be a
Yeah, of
weight
course.
bully.
No, agreed. Yeah, 100%. And then with points, it is what it is. Just like
Yes.
Dana White said, right? It's if you leave it to decision, then you expect nothing, right? So you want to
Yeah.
make it very clear. And then throwing, it's no different. So I is no different. You want to make sure it's a clear throw, whatever it may be, right? And if you get 1 point, fine. You get 3 points, great. And I mean, I'm not too crazy about the new international rules about the one. There's only one, only 3 point, and then it's just miscellaneous everything else. I don't.
It's weird. It's different. It's interesting too because in some sports, the rules change so slowly and infrequently. Like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the rules rarely change. There'll be a minor change or something here and there, but it doesn't change significantly. We're not changing how many points you get for mount, you know.
Right.
But in some of these other arts, Shuai Jiao, in Tamiki Aikido, these rules are changing every year, every 2 years, and it's challenging to keep up with, man.
Hmm.
And it changes the game. Like there's certain strategies that work with the 1, 2, and 3 point system that when it's 1 and 3 and it's all about whether you go down or not,
Right.
totally change.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's why like I over the years they were pretty steady for a while. Like they had solid 1, 2, 3 point throws, and I even have a manual from when I was in China. We were doing the referee certification, and like they gave us this book, and it was cute. It was, it had pictures, it showed each point. Like I don't know why they went out to change that, and I don't know if, and this is of course something that your viewers might not know, but there's a lot of politics in every art, right? But in Shuai
Of
Jiao, there's
course.
nonetheless, and so the Chinese that are running the tournaments in China proper are different than the ones that are running from that are connected to the Taiwanese.
Yes.
They're different groups, and so the rules have shifted between different groups, and they're not always the same. And that's equally what makes it more confusing because it should be a standard body of technique. And yeah, to your point, occasionally a modification, fine, but not a drastic modification. I think that the biggest one was the switch from 9 point mercy, I think, to a 6 point mercy, if I remember
Yes.
right. And
Yeah.
like, and that's insane because if you have 2 3 point throws, then then you're mercied.
Yep.
Like
And
that makes
it's weird too because in the US we do whatever we want too. So when I go to what like I went to nationals this year, they're like, well, we're gonna do 1, 2, and 3 point throws, but it's 10 point. I'm sorry. Yeah, and it's 10 point mercy. I'm
right,
thinking to myself, where did we get 10 point mercy?
right.
That's not the international rule. Like, why did we just made it 10 points because we felt like it, and then it all it did was drag the tournament really late,
Right. No, for
because
sure.
it was taking so long for people to win. So yeah, I think personally, and this is just my opinion, I think that stuff hurts the popularity of the sport, especially when take someone like yourself for example, you went and you did a whole referees training and you have a book, you have all this stuff, and then a couple of years later, nope, that's all gone. Not
It
true.
means
Not like that
nothing. Right,
anymore.
right, right, exactly.
So why did I do the training? What's the wait until you have the rules figured out, then hold the training.
Right, and it's not like it's a new art. That's the joke of it. So it's not
Yeah.
like there's been competitions for very. I mean, you want to go back in the long time ago, fine. But like let's say the past 100 years, there's been tournaments of Shuai Jiao, but it used to be just one throw, one win, kind of
Yeah.
similar to judo and ippon, but more like
Or
even
Mongolian wrestling,
a
right?
Mongolian wrestling. Right,
Just
right,
one
yeah,
fall.
right. So that was the old school method, which especially with a jacket, it's kind of boring. I mean, like, you get one throw and then you're off. That sucks. Or then it became best of three, one best throw out of 3 rounds, right? So if
Yeah.
you win two, it doesn't go to the third. So like, there's that. I like the idea of the point system. I think that, and it's not only in America or otherwise, but there is I don't want to say a lack of grip fighting, but you see it a lot with many groups of people doing Shuai where they're just not really focused on that gripping.
No, the gripping isn't there. When
And so,
now that I know it and I can see through the matrix, when I go to tournaments, I'm in the stands freaking out.
right,
I'm talking to my wife. I'm talking to anybody who's near me. I'm talking to somebody's grandpa when they don't know when to grab. They had no grips and they went for a throw. I mean, no joke. We're talking about the opponent has two grips on someone, and the guy who doesn't have any grips goes for a throw.
right,
You don't have a single grip.
right.
What was your plan? How are you going to throw them? You're just going to do a technique?
Yeah,
It's crazy to
you can
me
get
now
away.
that I understand it.
Mhm.
I have some empathy because there was a time where I didn't understand it. I still probably wouldn't have done that, but
I mean, like no gi, you can get away with it. You can enter and then go. I
yeah.
still think that you still should have some kind of grip before you go in, right? But yeah, no, I've seen that plenty. It's just it's a disconnect because it's not something that's really focused on as much. Um,
There's a big mistake in martial arts in general, and I see this across the board of boiling everything down to techniques,
right,
boiling
yeah,
everything down to the throw. The throw doesn't matter. It's not
no,
about the throw is the least important and the easiest part of the whole thing.
no, I agree with you. That's what we were saying before. It's like if your footwork is good and your body work is good, then it's whatever's open, and you need to have an idea of how to throw somebody in that direction. right?
Yeah.
So learning the technique is important, but I know that if I block the leg here and I take you out that way, it's, if he's moving that direction, I can do that. Maybe he's moving a little too fast, so I can't do that. So I have to turn my body and then shift and then maybe sweep. Like those, it gives you the options to, to understand, but it's really just block or turn or move and turn. Those, that's what it ends up becoming. It's not about the technique. Like I can't say that in any tournament I thought I'm going to do this technique to somebody.
Yeah.
It's just I'm pulling him. Oh, it's open, and I just go because my muscle memory has gotten comfortable with just putting my hand out or dropping a leg or whatever the case may be like that. And that's to me that's when you've gotten so comfortable with doing something. That's what you want. You want it to be just autonomous. You don't want it to be like you don't want any kind of thinking involved in the
Yeah,
process.
totally.
As
I
you're
I
okay.
was getting ready for the sumo tournament, and I was playing around with a guy that I train with who's bigger than me. He's like 265 or so, and I was trying to figure out how to throw him. So I said, you know what, let's not do the push out for a second. I just want to play around with this belt. And I kind of was doing like a Goza, like Uchimata type thing, and it was really working. And I was like, okay, this is my plan. I'm gonna do Uchimata. I'm gonna get in there. And I went to the sumo tournament, and the first match, I get in there, and I'm moving around with the guy, and I could just feel that his leg was his left leg was so close to my right leg, and I just hit a big like Ouchigari,
Mm-hmm.
and got him. And then after that, I was thinking to myself, I was like, yeah, like maybe I should just relax and
Right.
play what I know and not worry about having such a rigid game plan. It doesn't I don't think that's going to serve me. If you're too rigid and stuck on one thing, it's you miss out, You
Yep.
you're tunnel vision.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's why. I mean, part of the main focus and working that gripping for so long was so vital when we were training because it's like you have to be able to move your opponent. You have to be able to get comfortable with that because
Yeah.
once you get in that position, it doesn't matter. But if you have any hesitation, in how to move your opponent, that's all you're thinking about, and so
Yes.
that's really the problem. Like all I want to do is just manipulate the hell out of you, regardless of how you move. I don't care. Same thing with you. It's like you just want to move them, get them moving, get them scared, and once you feel that moment, you know when you're fighting somebody when it's not that they've given up, but that their body has for that half a second.
Yeah,
You
totally.
know, and that momentum's picked up to the point that they can't stop. All you have to do is just put something in the middle of it, and they'll
Yep.
just they'll fly.
Just a little trip.
Yeah, you
So
know.
kind of coming to the end here, I was thinking a good way to kind of wrap up is if maybe you could share with everybody one. Well, you had your grandmaster, your first grandmaster, and then Shifu Zhang, and then
Mhm.
I was thinking maybe you could just share with us what you think, like one of the things you learned from your first grandmaster, and one thing you learned from Sifu Zhang, and then maybe even one thing that your own kind of distilled wisdom about Shuai Jiao, about training Shuai Jiao. What would you say, like, the most important thing you learned from each of them is, and the most important thing that you've come to on yourself, or an important thing, doesn't have to be the superlative.
No, I gotcha. So from Lasifu Zheng, and Sifu Gabrielle, both fluidity.
Mm,
Fluidity of motion, not just trying to manipulate your opponent, just going with it. So you grab, you start moving. That doesn't work. You just flow into the next technique, flow to the next technique.
yeah.
Lavelle used to call it my bag of tricks. It's like it would always be like, oh, I'm not here. Okay, I'm just gonna change up. I'm gonna move this way. I didn't have to worry about just trying to. I'm gonna get that one technique.
Yeah.
All right. So that I would
Not
say
being
that.
committed to that one thing.
Yeah, so it didn't matter what it was, where you were. If I pulled you in one direction and you shifted into another, I'm not going to sit there and fight against it. It was just immediately like, all right, I'm going this way. All right, I'm going back this way, moving forward, and it was kind of like a game of chess. Like
Yeah,
that
that's
was
super
the
important.
that would be the way that to me the flow was really really super important. And then Sifujang, it's forcing it not in a strength way, but I mean, yeah, using strength to a degree, but using your body weight to really
Yeah.
shift your opponent. That to me is
No, there's an
the,
art to
the
forcing things.
Yeah. It's not using your strength. I mean, yeah, you are physically using muscle, but like, and I liken it to the big stick because the shifting motion this way, right?
Yeah.
It's not just pulling, it's your whole body. You're actually dropping your weight forward as you're moving in that direction. And when you're doing that, you're pulling your opponent around. You're not really falling, but you're gathering all of their weight into one direction. And as they're leaning just enough, then you shift that direction. And that's
Yeah.
when they go. So like I would say forcing your opponent into the right position without utilizing all of your strength and still maintaining all your strength in the process.
Yeah, it's like that pull phase that he talks about. He always says first you grab, and then you pull, and then you throw. Is that when you're
Right.
forcing them to move and making them make themselves vulnerable to the technique.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, because his technique is so clean the way he does it, and it's like I was always trying to figure out, like, how do you make that happen? And it's just about applying the force in a direction that causes your opponent to move any which way you want him to. So
Mm.
really coercing your opponent past a certain point that I didn't really understand before.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my thinking. It's flow and force.
Mm.
You can try to force some, you try to force your opponent around, and maybe 90% of the time it'll work, but then once in a while,
You're gonna get
you're gonna
stuck.
feel right. And when you get stuck, it's not being stuck; it's just flowing right to the
Well,
next position, or vice versa. You're flowing and moving, and all of a sudden you stop and you yank them, and all of a sudden they don't know where the hell their body went, but all of a sudden they're flipping around. And there's nothing more satisfying than watching someone go completely horizontal in the air. You're
no,
like,
that's great.
you know, so
You're
I'm smoking
like, I
just
did
like a.
that.
You're right. You're like, I did it. I did it.
That's
Yeah,
one nice thing about throwing arts is once you throw them, you get to admire your work. In jiu-jitsu, you have to jump
yeah,
on the ground with them right away and keep beating them up. But in
yeah,
Shuai Jiao and bulk and judo, a lot of times you can throw them down, and if you know it's good, you just kind of get to watch.
yeah, for sure. And then you can watch it and repeat on video if you have it. It's actually, I have to say, I've only got some really good throws on video, which I'm always upset about. It's like, I had a camera at a lot of tournaments that I could, but I didn't always have them. So it's just like, I feel upset because I remember some techniques that I was like, I know I made that guy fly, but
My first Shuai Jiao tournament back in 2018, I was throwing somebody with like a front cut, and he
uh
resisted, and I threw him down and knocked him out cold.
yeah, I
And
know.
there's no video of it. It's
I
like
know.
that's never happened before. We were freaking out. We're like, there's no video of this. Like, we need to see this again.
Well, in 2018, people had phones still, but they weren't crazy on social media the same way they are now. So it's like
Yeah.
you wouldn't have, you do, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if there was somebody in that crowd that actually did get video, but probably didn't say it. But it's like there was and I know we got to go, but there was this. I did a Golden Gloves match, and I got my head knocked out, and I literally was knocked out standing. And I really wanted to watch that fight again, and I'd gotten a lead from somebody, and this is, I mean, mid 2000s, so it's like, if you were lucky enough to have someone taking video, then that'd be a thing. But I remember being knocked out standing, and I remember it because I was kind of like getting punched in the head and kind of looking at my coach, like I was completely knocked out to 90% degree. But I really wanted to watch this guy beat the piss out of me. Like, I don't know. It was one of those things. It's like I just wanted to get it, but I
You're
couldn't
like,
get
I
video
don't
of that.
remember this. I
Right.
wasn't encoding memory at the time, but I want to see it.
I really did want to see it. I wanted to see how bad it was. Yeah, exactly. Probably one of the worst beatings in my life. He was a nice guy after everything, but
Most of the time, they are.
yeah. He ended up winning the whole tournament, the whole national. So I couldn't
That
really
always
feel
makes
bad.
me feel better.
I was his first. I gave him the confidence. Nah, but like anything else, yeah. I mean, you being able to launch someone is a beautiful thing. It feels so good when you do it right,
Yeah.
and when it's not perfect.
Yep.
You always know it's not perfect, but when you do get it perfect, it feels just clean like air. Something you see like in an anime, it's like you just see it and you're like, yatta,
Yes. That's funny.
yeah.
Hey, well, thank you for doing this. This was great. At some point, we'll have to come back and do another episode.
No worries, bro.
But
Thank you.
I think there was a lot of good little nuggets of information there for people if they want to learn Shuai Jiao and figure it out. Maybe we should have said a little bit more on selling people on Shuai Jiao because
Sure.
people
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
realize how cool it is and how much there is to learn. It's one of the best throwing arts, and it's been absolutely tremendously good for me in my jujitsu, my throwing game, gi, no gi, everything, sumo.
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt. Even all over the place, which is great. But yeah, no, it's the truth. It really does. It does complement other styles, and it does even complement judo. Even though judo and swai, you think judo and swai jiao are that different? It's just um, knowing how to manipulate the body is worth everything. And
Yep.
you know, gi, no gi, longer gis, shorter gis, it doesn't really matter. It's the concept of body mechanics and really learning. And so I would definitely say Shuai Jiao would be the art of body mechanics, of manipulating the body in motion. That's the best way I can think about it. So I agree. I think that everyone really should pick up a little bit or pick up a lot, and
Everyone should do Shuai
I agree.
Jiao.
Everyone should do Shuai Jiao. It'll up your game. Is really what it comes down
Yeah,
to.
totally.
That I can guarantee. So, let's see what's up.
Very cool. Well, thanks for doing this again, Matt.
You got it, bro.
Appreciate
Thank
you.
you. Likewise, man.